how's it going? And welcome to Call It What You Want. I'm Jimmy Conrad alongside Charlie Davies and Jesse Marsch. And boys, today, I think I kind of want to call the show a Nottingham Forest podcast because we're talking a lot about Forest. I never thought that would come out of my mouth. But Jesse, what do you want to call the show? Because you can call it whatever you want.
Yeah, my first feeling when we talked about this is I thought people were going to call us what they wanted, right? Which
well,
we all know how that can go. We all know how that can go. But yeah, I would have only complimentary things to say about you guys. Okay, if I were the one making comments, I just want to make that well known. Okay,
I love that. I love that. Charlie, what do you want to call the show today?
You tell me. You give me that magic word because I've been waiting since you brought it up in the pre-production meeting. Like I honestly can't wait to drop it because I'm ready to go.
I'm going to give you the word of the day in a second. Don't worry on that. But we have a big show, everybody. We are talking about some of the best bits of business in the January transfer window. We're talking Americans abroad, of course. And we got some transfer news overall about one particular player named Gio Reyna. But first, we're going to get into our Call It What You Want word of the day. And are you guys ready for this? Because obviously you can call it soccer or football or fuchiball or whatever it is. But we're coming up with one. Now, I need you to identify which language or which country this is from. And the word is Fútbol.
Ooh.
I'm ready.
Yeah.
I'm ready.
You ready for this one?
I think we should do it together, Charlie. I think we should do a 1, 2, 3 and say it at the same time.
Okay.
Ready?
Yeah.
1, 2, 3, Dutch.
Austria.
You waited. You were supposed to. You waited.
You're supposed to say Dutch.
Yeah.
Jesse Marsch is correct. Well done, Jesse.
Yes. Yes.
I didn't even need to give you a clue on that one, but just
Dutch is
else.
It's a little like German. It's a little similar. So
I knew I was in the right area. Gosh.
Austria.
You can say that every time. I'm in the right area somewhere. Yeah. All right. Well, one of the clues was only one team from Europe's top 5 leagues has a manager from this country. That was one. And then each European Cup final from 1969 to 1973 featured a team from this country. And that was Ajax. And Feyenoord actually won one.
What was the first clue?
The first one was only one team from Europe's top 5 leagues has a manager from this country.
Ah.
Who is that?
He's under a lot of turmoil and stress right now, Jesse.
Ten Hag.
Eric.
Ten Hag. Yes. Well done, Charlie.
All right, let's get into the show then. And I already teased it a little bit, but Gio Reyna is in the middle of a transfer saga. And right now he's being linked to Nottingham Forest, Sevilla, and Marseille. And Edin Terzic, the manager of Borussia Dortmund, also saying, hey, I expect him to be available on Friday, which means he's not going to be sold at all. He's getting some would say garbage minutes for Borussia Dortmund. They won against Bochum 3-1 this past weekend. So, Jesse, I'm going to come to you first. Say he goes to Nottingham Forest and plays for Nuno Espirito Santo. Where does he fit? Now, I know they got a lot of injuries right now, but do you actually – maybe I'll back it up. Do you think he could help that club?
Yes, I think he could definitely help Nottingham Forest. It's not, when I was talking about the kind of football that I'd like to see Gio play, that's probably the opposite. And they would, I guess, probably, they use their front 3 players a lot as big transition players. They like to defend a little bit deeper and then catch you on transition a little bit more. Gio could be good in these situations. Obviously, the league would be a step up for him, so that part would be good. So yeah, I mean, I can see the interest being real, and I think some clubs in the January window, if they don't have a ton of cash surplus, they go out for loan players. So that's maybe where Gio would be, maybe a loan to buy or a loan situation for now. So yeah, let's see what happens with that.
Well, this past weekend against Bristol City in the FA Cup, it was a 0-0 draw. They'll replay that one on February 7th. Now, Chuck, when I think about Nottingham Forest, they've scored a lot of goals under Nuno Espirito Santo. I think they're averaging more than 2 goals a game, and under Steve Cooper, they were basically 1 per game. So they're doing it on that side of the ball. And though Gio could complement potentially how he sees that moving forward, but he's going to have some competition, for spots, especially when Elanga comes back and Awoniyi comes back into the team. I think that Gibbs White has been excellent as well. So they have obviously some attacking options. My fear is that if he goes there, he might just be sitting on the bench watching these players play. Because to Jesse's point, it's going to take a little bit to adapt to this new rhythm and a new team and a new style.
Well, I think another portion of this conversation that's probably really critical in making a decision like this is where in the table are these teams?
Mm-hmm.
And so when you talk about breaking in and getting time, Sevilla is 16th. They haven't won in 5 games, the last 5 games. It's been very difficult to think of Sevilla as a place to go and be settled in when you're battling relegation. Nottingham Forest, they're in 16th in the Prem. And we know how difficult it is to stay in the Premier League and the expectations with every match. There's no time to settle in at any of these places. And then if you throw in Marseille, they're on the outside looking in the Liga in terms of trying to get to a Champions League spot.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, but, they just tied Monaco. You feel like, okay, they came back in. They were down twice, and they came back. They leveled the score 2-2. But again, I don't know if you'd break into that midfield with Veretout, Kondogbia, and then Onana. So you're trying to figure out where is he playing? Is he playing in an advanced role in midfield as a number 10 if the teams are playing a 4-3-3 or playing with 5 in the midfield? Or is he playing as a winger that's inverted? And I think we've all come to an agreement he's better centrally and in more an advanced position where you're not asking him to get box to box. So I don't think any of these 3 clubs. I don't think any of these 3 clubs are the right fit for him per se, given his skill set. So ultimately, I'd rather stay at Dortmund and chase the Champions League and chase a top 3 spot than go to any of these places that are battling relegation. To me, these are all places just to get out. As in the Dortmund's position is so bad that you just want to move away.
Okay,
yeah, Go ahead, Jimmy. Sorry, go ahead, Jimmy.
No, I was just going to jump in because I like where your rhetoric is going, because when you are a team that is in desperation mode, the willingness and desire to potentially settle the ball and play becomes a little bit more difficult. And obviously, Jesse can speak to this quite well. But what I find interesting about Marseille is that maybe there's a team there or situation there where he could really add in a different way than Dortmund. Dortmund, it seems like the decision's been made by Edin Terzic that there isn't room for him moving forward.
He's surplus.
Yeah, he's surplus. It's they're not going to rely on him and give him that responsibility that maybe he's looking for, and whether or not he's earned it, we don't know, right? We're not there every day at training. But I would say at Marseille, there's something different. Maybe getting into a new league, getting a breath of fresh air and a new situation. We've seen it with Christian Pulisic in particular, has really thrived with AC Milan. And maybe Gio could use that as well. And Marseille could be that nice stepping stone where it's not the pressure of relegation, but it gives them a chance to be in a league where they can be fighting and playing against some good competition week in and week out as he tries to reestablish his confidence in being an everyday player. I think Marseille maybe feels like the best chance to make that happen. I don't know if it's the right fit tactically. I'd like to hear Jesse's thoughts on it overall, but in terms of situations, the relegation zone doesn't seem as fun.
Yeah. So first, I know Pablo Longoria. He's the sport director at Marseille, and I know Victor Orta from my time with Leeds, and he's the
flexing
sport
on us,
director
Jesse.
Flexing on us. Yeah. And both sport directors I know like young players and like to play dynamic football. Sevilla is a little handcuffed right now on how they can play specifically because they don't have a lot of finances, and they've got a really old team in the back, right? So it's a little bit harder for them to play the dynamic football that maybe they would like to play. Marseille, I think, has potential to become a player in Liga, and I think the idea of Gio going to a place like that. Obviously, Marseille's fans are incredibly passionate, and it's a fierce place, a fierce club to go to. But I think if you're Gio, you've got to be thinking, how do I get myself now regularly on the pitch so I can really get my career back on track? And then whether it's a loan to buy or he uses the loan even as just a platform to show that he can now perform at the level that we all believe that he can. And then maybe he has interests in the summer from some other clubs that give him a big chance to really get his career back on track. So I think that has to be the strategy right now. And I do believe that Marseille has a winner, has a good club. They have good players. They have the ability to play good football. And they're right on the cusp right now of European football in Liga. So I think that could be a good place for him.
Okay.
The only thing I was going to say,
ahead.
the only thing I would add, Jimmy and Jesse, is that if you're taking a step back, let's say from a Dortmund, you're not going a step back to an uncertainty. I think if you're going a step back, it's almost a guarantee. This is the spot. You, myself, Jimmy, we can all look at the team and say, this is exactly where he's going to fit. Because those three teams, you can't tell me this is where he's going to fit. This is his position. I feel like if you're going to take a step back for him at his stage in his development, how his career has already been, that it's got to already be set in stone that this is the position he's going to play and these are the expectations, and you fulfill. And if you fulfill them or not, at least you're going to have the opportunity to do that. I couldn't tell you on either of those teams that he's a for sure going to walk into that team and play, given that where they are in their seasons. You have two that are fighting relegation and one that's trying to push for a top 4 finish. And Frank McCourt, the owner of Marseille, obviously has a vision of getting them back to competing with PSG for a league title and being as big as that they are in France. That this is a team that's pushing on all cylinders to get there. So I still feel that there are a number of other teams he could go to that would put him in a better position to succeed.
I think expectations need to be not only for us as fans, but for him in particular. He's only played 330 minutes so far this season, so it's not like people probably can see the potential, and there's enough of a track record to see how talented he is. But if you haven't been playing regularly, I don't think he's going to walk into any team outside. I guess if he dropped a couple steps, he could probably make that happen, all things considered.
That to me is the challenge, right? So Charlie, of course, you would love to see him go to a good team where they feel like he can walk in, but given that he hasn't always been fit and that his minutes that he's logged over the course of the season so far, they would have to be just going on the potential and what they've seen of him in the past, right? So this is why some of the relegation clubs are thinking we need a player like Gio to help spark our team to get moving a little bit more so that we don't get caught come May where we're in need of a result in the last 2 matches. And maybe if we can get a player on loan that financially fits into our budget, this is the strategy of how they can accomplish their goals for the season.
All right, we're going to take our first break of Call It What You Want. When we come back, we're going to do a little recap of the transfer window for the U.S. men's national team player pool overall, and then we'll get into our Americans abroad, and it's just going to be a lot of fun, so don't go anywhere. Welcome back to Call It What You Want. I'm Jimmy alongside Charlie and Jesse, and we are excited that you're here with us, watching or listening. Now, we're going to get into the transfer window. It's nearing its close here in January, and I wanted us to each pick a piece of news that we were most excited about or disappointed about or whatever it may be, whatever verb you want to use or adjective you want to use to describe it. So here's your list. Ethan Horvath linked to Cardiff. Okay, there's one for you. MLS rejects Spartak Moscow's $13 million bid for FC Dallas's Jesus Ferreira. Whoa. Nico Giacchini completes his move to Como, so from St. Louis to Serie B. Johnny Cardoso joining Real Betis. Brandon Vazquez joining Monterrey. Kate Cowell joining Chivas Guadalajara. Chicharito is now joining him there. Miles Robinson leaving Atlanta United and turning down some offers in Europe to go to FC Cincinnati. We have the Colorado trio of Sammy Vines coming back from Europe, Georgi Mihailovic coming back from Europe, and Zach Steffen coming back from Europe to play for Chris Armas. Kellen Acosta not going back to LAFC. Cameron Carter-Vickers signing a new deal with Celtic, 5.5-year contract extension with them. And Orlando rejecting Sheffield Wednesday's bid for Duncan McGuire. So, Jesse, I'll come to you. Which one you want?
Go the last one. I'm going to go the last one. I think Duncan McGuire is a player with big potential. And I know Sheffield Wednesday's not, maybe the marquee club of the championship, but it's a coach that I know. He was a video analyst, Danny Roll, in Red Bull. So at Leipzig, I never worked directly with him, but I'm close friends with him. And he was also the assistant with the German national team with Hansi Flick. So he's gone to Sheffield Wednesday, I think really changed the whole culture of the way they play and of the idea of what the club is. I think he's done an amazing job. He plays very, very intensive football. So for me, I think Duncan McGuire would be a perfect fit for that situation. And as much as it may not seem like the sexiest transfer, but still getting your foot in Europe, going to a club where I think his style of play fits with what they're trying to achieve with the team, I think we really give him the opportunity to land in Europe in a place where he can succeed and he can kickstart now his development of what it would be like over here. So I was a little bit sad to read that. And I understand Orlando has to protect their assets and think about, what the valuation of different players are at any given time. But I would have loved to have seen that transfer.
Yeah, that's a good one. I'm curious about the trajectory of Duncan McGuire moving forward, and obviously taking a step to cut his teeth in a difficult environment would be a nice sink or swim moment for him. How about you, Chuck? What stands out for you?
Yeah, and Sheffield Wednesday have been struggling in the championship. So, I mean, that would be a good move in terms of
to be a savior, right?
Yeah,
How about to be the savior?
They've only scored 22 goals in the championship this season. So they're the worst team in terms of scoring goals. Come in as a striker, that means you're going to play, which is a good spot to be in. In terms of stories that I really liked is probably Johnny Cardoso. I feel like that one goes under the radar, coming into a strong Betis team that is very, very, very much so in the mix for Europe. They're sitting in 7th place in the table, so they're 2 points behind Real Sociedad for that Conference League spot. I just feel like that is a move where you're launching yourself into a new stratosphere. You're in La Liga. You're in a good team that plays good football, and he's getting playing time. He seems like he's settled in really well. So it only makes the midfield for the U.S. men's national team, which is the strongest part of this group, that much more dynamic, having different types of options, players who are comfortable on the ball, who can play out of trouble. If you want to be a possession-based team, then you need more possession-based midfielders, and that's why I think this move is fantastic for Cardoso.
And yeah. Also, Jimmy, sorry, really quick. Let me go through the matches that Betis has coming up: Getafe, Cadiz, Dinamo Zagreb, Deportivo Alaves, Zagreb again, and then Athletic Club. So he has a chance to get into a lot of matches, I think, against teams where he can be successful and really establish himself. So I'm really, really excited to see his progress and his performances. And I think this is going to be big for him and for the U.S. national team.
I agree with you on that. One of the things I'm most excited about with his move to Betis is playing for Manuel Pellegrini. I have a lot of respect for him. The guy's a proven winner. He's gone to different areas and different clubs around the world and have had success. And so, Jesse, I kind of wanted to ask you, is Pellegrini, I'm sure you study other coaches and their methodologies and get ideas or inspired by certain things that you're seeing. Has Pellegrini ever hit your radar in that way, given what he's done with his coaching career?
Well, I think, when he first, whether you look at when he coached Colombia or a lot of different clubs, Man City, at different places he's been at, he hasn't always been the most creative. He's been more about defensive structure, right? And making sure that you're hard to play against and then finding ways to be good with the ball from there. But when you watch Betis play now, they're different. And I think, again, he's evolved more. They have a lot more ball possession. They have a lot more positional play in the way that they build up. They're another team that plays against the ball in one formation and shifts a little bit of what they do with the ball to another formation. So this is what I love to see more than anything is managers that like to evolve and like to, try different systems and like to continue to push themselves with the teams they have. I mean, you could go down the list, but I remember playing Ancelotti in Champions League when he was with Napoli, and he was playing this fluid, but the football he was playing was so fluid and how he was using all of his players. And it was like, because with other teams that I'd watched him before that, he had been very simple with like just having good structure and then letting his creative players do what they do. But this was like really having to study the tactics of what the team was doing.
Do you want Jimmy to pick that up, or do you want me to pick it up?
Yeah, geez. I don't. It might be too heavy for me to pick up. I'll just.
But I think Pellegrini. Listen, he's older. He might be 70.
He's 70. He's actually 70 years old. He's got a lot of experience. What I love is that Pellegrini, and they identified Cardoso and said we're willing to trust this player, and I think that is a huge sign of respect. And
he still has the energy, Jimmy.
He has the energy. Whatever pills he's taken to have that energy. It's good for him. That's awesome. But sorry, I just took that a whole right turn that nobody was expecting. As for me, the transfer news or some bits of news, because it didn't actually go anywhere, but Cameron Carter-Vickers re-signing with Celtic, I thought was interesting. There are a lot of different ways you can slice that, where maybe he re-signs so his transfer fee or whatever is a little bit higher, or if anybody wants to buy and buyout clause, then Celtic could get more money for him if he ends up leaving. I was just hoping at this point that he would maybe start to look away from Celtic and maybe test himself in a different league. With all due respect to the Scottish Premiership, I think you're getting some good games against Rangers, maybe Aberdeen from time to time. Those away games can be a little chippy, of course, but and then you're in the Champions League, but they seem to be getting run over recently in that particular competition, and this year in particular, getting crash out in the group stages. I wanted him to take that another step, and I thought he warranted it. I think he's been doing enough. Ange Postecoglou said he was the best defender in Scotland. We talked about it when Ange was still there, Big Ange. But so there's clearly some trust and recognition that he can be a top player, and I just want to see if he could cut his teeth in another league that's just a little bit better. So I don't say I'm disappointed, because I'm sure there might be other factors as to why he re-signed that deal, but I was hopeful that he would be maybe looking to make a move here pretty soon. I don't know if you guys have anything to add to Cameron Carter-Vickers.
So in Leipzig, a lot of times when players would resign, it was to introduce a buyout clause into their contract.
Yeah.
And so they would obviously sign for more, but then they would create, and then the club and the player or the agency would agree that in a summer window or this summer window, if we can get this fee, then we'll let the player go. So that, because a lot of times, like, Carter-Vickers may not have a buyout clause, in which case he doesn't have the flexibility that he would like to have to choose exactly where he wants to go and win. So, sometimes those contracts get negotiated so that it's a win-win for both sides. And I've seen that. And when I saw that he resigned, that's the first thing I thought. I'm like, okay,
yeah, I was leaning there too.
Creating a light at the end of the tunnel for this.
And he gets paid more per week, I'm sure. So that creates a win for him.
Have you had a player, Jesse, because I've also seen this in Europe, where there is an understanding about a fee, but the player does exceptionally well. Maybe, scores 25 goals instead of the 10, which everyone expected, or, the performances go
Erling Haaland,
super positive. Yeah. And you're like,
I was just going to say,
we did have a price, but we're going to change.
Well, we had Erling for 5, right? And we bought him for 5. And then the buyout clause was 20. And at the time, you buy a player for 5 and you go 20, you go, okay, you make 4 times if we get that. But at the time that we sold him to Dortmund, his valuation was like 60, right? Then another thing I saw at Leipzig a lot was take Upamecano. Upamecano signed a new contract. If they sold him in year 1, he had a 100 million buyout clause. If they sold him in year 2, he had an 80. They sold him in year 3, they had a 60, and it went down. And so then the club had to also think like, okay, we love having Upa. He's making a lot of progress, but the longer we keep him, the more we devalue the asset. And so what's our threshold? At what point do we say, okay, now it's time to sell him? So there were a lot of, Szoboszlai had a contract a little bit like that. Like, so there, it's again, like if you're a club like Leipzig or Salzburg, and you're still a development club, or, Leipzig's probably like a 2nd-tier club, Salzburg's like a 4th-tier club, and then how it fits in with the overall ecosystem of the levels of clubs in Europe, and how do you attract players and convince them that's the right place to be there for 2 or 3 years, and they can develop themselves with the kind of football that they're playing and the opportunity to play at a high level or in a better league, and then what it can mean for a springboard for them to move forward. And by the way, I don't think anyone did that better than Alfie Holland and Erling Haaland with what they did when they went from Molde to Salzburg to Dortmund to Man City. And maybe next, who knows?
Real Madrid.
Maybe.
Yeah, there's only one other. I don't know where you go from Man City.
Yeah, you probably go to Real Madrid.
I think Madrid is the only other place you could go to at this point.
Yeah.
That's the last step for him because his national team isn't going to be doing anything anytime soon. All right, everybody, we're going to take our next break of Call It What You Want. When we come back, we're going to talk about Americans abroad and what our player pool did this relative weekend past week. And it should be a lot of fun because that's what our show is all about. So don't go anywhere. Hello and welcome back to Call It What You Want. Jimmy Conrad alongside Charlie Chuckwagon Davies and Jesse Marshmallow Marsch. And we are talking a little Americans abroad. Got some notable results this past weekend. Brandon Vazquez, who made the big move from FC Cincinnati down to Mexico at Liga MX side Monterrey, has scored 3 goals in 2 games. That's pretty good, and 2 in his last one against San Luis. Gianluca Busio scores in his 3rd straight game as Venezia beat Ternana 1-0, so it was the match winner. They are currently 3rd in Serie B. Kevin Paredes scores against Cologne in his first full Bundesliga game. Congratulations to him. He's the U.S. Soccer Young Male Athlete of the Year. Gaga Slonina, back-to-back clean sheets. That's awesome. He's on loan from Chelsea to Belgium. Tim Ream coming back into the team as the Fulham captain, makes his first appearance since December 3rd, and it was unfortunately a 2-0 loss to Newcastle in the FA Cup. Chuck, I'm going to come to you. Anybody stand out for you in our player pool this past weekend?
It's the young player of the year, Kevin Paredes, playing against Cole and getting his first full 90 minutes. He did a tremendous job. I mean, he not only had the goal, but he was constantly active, using his pace, getting in behind. It was a nice timing on the run that he scored for the cross. He gets in behind, slips in between the right back and the center back, and gets a nice tap in. He had 49 touches in the game. He was, trying to dribble at his opponents. So for me, this is a big step in his career, getting his first 90 minutes under his belt in the Bundesliga, and then now just trying to continue to build, because I think he's going to play an important role this summer at the Olympics.
All right. I like that shout a lot. He's a very good player, and his upside is tremendous.
I put him on my Copa America roster, baby.
That's right. Jesse, who else you got on who stood out for you this weekend?
I took Christian. So I watched the Milan match, and he hasn't. I think I picked him to score 15 goals a few weeks ago, and I'm hopeful that he can still reach that. But one of the things that Christian does really well for the team is he's maybe the most responsible player that they have. He gets up, he runs forward, he gets himself in the box, he comes back, he defends, he helps win tackles, and he's going up for aerial duels. So the way, I've been at times asking for more out of him because I just believe in him so much as a player. And when I watch this game, there's still a lot of little improvements, and I'm gonna go and show a video a section later that we're calling Coach's Corner. We'll see how that all turns out. But I think that a lot of the little things that Christian does go unnoticed sometimes, and I think that he plays all the time, not just because of what he's providing the team in the attacking third, but for what he brings into the game overall. So. Yeah, he had a couple moments where maybe he could have had an assist. He was in the box late a couple of times where if a pass gets played to him. I still, when I watch Milan, I don't think they get enough guys in the box. I think they're too selfish when they get around the goal. By the way, Milan tied 2-2 against Bologna and missed 2 penalties in this match. So, I think they should let Christian take penalties so he can get to 15.
They keep missing them. Let Christian step up and take them.
But again, I like Christian so much, and I still believe that even though he's a majorly established player, I still think there's so much room for improvement. But I do like his overall mentality of he wants to win, he wants to help the team, and he's willing to do the dirty work to help get that done.
Well, speaking of the dirty work, there's one player that I thought did tremendous this past week. He came on as a sub for Juventus against Empoli. I'm talking Timo Weah. They had gotten an early red card in this game, Juve. Milik with a pretty nasty tackle and obviously an uphill battle. And it was 1-1 at this point, and he's playing right back. And Timo Weah the Empoli get on a breakaway, and Timo Weah comes from nowhere and slows the play down and makes a nice tackle in the box. And I'm like, that's what's up. I mean, Timo Weah, not known for this defensive intensity, but made the play in a key moment. So I wanted to give him a shout out in terms of doing some of the thankless dirty work that maybe didn't get noticed and didn't have anything on the other side of the ball per se, but made a key play that ultimately saved the point for Juve, even though they were a man down. However, that is not who I want to highlight. I really want to talk about Brandon Vazquez. I've been thoroughly impressed with how he has made somewhat of a seamless transition from playing with FC Cincinnati, where he wasn't really the key man, especially this particular year for the best team in MLS, well, at least in the regular season. Luciano Acosta, the league MVP, was a little bit more of the focal point. Didn't have the same numbers that he had the previous season in MLS, but he's 6'2", all muscle, this guy, and went down to Monterrey. And at times, as we talked about Gio Reyna, well, he's changing leagues. There's going to be a transition period, and he has scored 3 goals in his 2 starts. His first game, he came off the bench, 22 minutes, didn't have as much impact in that. But since he's made some starts, he's made a tremendous, tremendous impact. And it's been great to see just how comfortable he looks so quickly into joining a top team in Mexico and scoring some fantastic goals. And long may that continue. I know they're early on in this particular season down in Mexico, but he's on top of the scoring charts, and it's exciting. It's exciting, and I think it gives us another option. We've talked about him before, and we've seen him before with the U.S. men's national team, but he gives us a different dynamic than maybe we have with some of the other guys. Ricardo Pepi can do some stuff that Brandon Vazquez can do, but not in the same way. Balogun, a little bit of a different player. You have Josh Sargent, who's more of a slasher, getting in behind, doing a lot of running. But there's something about Brandon Vazquez that I think brings a different type of perspective and different type of player profile to our team. And if he keeps scoring goals, he's going to be hard for Greg Berhalter to deny. So I've been really impressed with Vazquez. And as our resident number 9 on the show here, call it what you want, Charlie, your thoughts on Brandon Vazquez?
It's a great shout, one. I think in terms of being a big body in the box and making dynamic runs, he's pretty damn good. Where he needed to improve the most, and I think when you're talking about the U.S. men's national team at that level to be trusted as a striker, to be an option, it was the ball at his feet and being a part of the buildup and pressing at the right times, defensive responsibilities, because you start the press, and so you make everything else predictable behind you. So tactically and technically in tight spaces, that's where he needed to make the jump. And I think this move helps him with that process. And not only that, you got to stick to doing what makes you great as a 9, and that's scoring goals. So there couldn't have been a better start for him with Monterrey Giants in Liga MX. They're sitting, obviously it's early in the season, but they're second in the table, 17 matches in. I love this move from Brandon Vazquez, and I love how he's taking on this challenge. It's a step up from Cincinnati, and he's showing that he wants to be in the conversation. That's all you can do. Control what you can control, which is putting yourself in difficult environments and working on your game. So that's a great shout for you in terms of Americans abroad.
All right, everybody, it's break time. More Call It What You Want right after this. Welcome back to Call It What You Want. I'm Jimmy alongside Jesse and Chuck, and we had a little talk about Americans abroad, specifically Christian Pulisic, who is Jesse Marsch's pick. And Jesse, I want to hand it over to you now because I know you're going to do some in-depth analysis, so I'm very curious to see what you have to say about Captain America. Take it away.
Yeah. So, this is a little bit of an example of what we would do in terms of an individual video with a specific player. And I do a lot of this, right, where I like to sit down, especially with the important players, and talk through the things that I think are important in their overall development and how we're trying to play. Right. And then it's also an opportunity to get to know them a little bit better and really start to form the kind of relationship where there's give and take and understanding. So, in this video, I focused on 4 aspects. So the first is some of his build-up positioning, then some of the ideas around some of the crossing and some of the things trying to execute with his team on what kind of things you want to see from a crossing perspective, a couple things on transition. And then the last one is just to show and highlight. And I would try to always end on some real positive things. And I talked about this a little bit in the podcast about the fact that Christian really inserts himself into the game and tries to do everything he can for the team to help out in any way. And defensively, I think he makes a difference. It's not just what he does with the ball, but what he does against it. So this first aspect is build-up, right? So what you see here is that when they had just won the ball, pause, and you can even see that Christian was pointing to Musa about trying to get to the ball. I think that what they want from him a lot is to go on the touchline and now be positioned wide. But specifically when they win balls or even when they're in buildup, I think a better way for Christian to get himself into the game, and this is what I'm talking about a lot, is not just standing on the touchline. And sometimes you can have a relationship where you go out wide and then maybe an inside midfielder or a fullback looks to go inside a little bit. But I'd like to see more times where he's not drifting out wide and where he's actually trying to find a space more in the opponent's midfield or behind their midfield line so that he can catch balls in there and then be thinking about going straight to goal and being vertical. So you see this, so I just drew this here as like, this is a pocket where I think he should be thinking about getting the ball, catching it, and starting to go at the opponent's back line. See, instead Musa has to turn around and play that way because Christian's going out wide. So here, right? Stay in the opponent's, like near their back line. So we call this the red zone, the zone in between the opponent's midfield line and the back line. And Christian now wants to come back and get the ball. So he naturally thinks that the way to do that is to go closer to make himself available. However, if you can see in this play, if he stays in this position, and sometimes in the opponent's red zone, I'll just draw a circle around where the opponent is and say, you want to position yourself as far away and as in the middle of that pocket as you can be so that you can give yourself the best amount of time to turn and now start to play in against the opponent's back line where you're difficult to be pressured, right? And that evolves him obviously to scan and look around and know his positioning. But if he stays a little bit deeper when he catches that ball, he can really be an attacking player instead of more like a development or build-up player in this phase here. And then the other aspect is, pause, if you do play with the fullback then, and you're too deep in the midfield, then you can't get yourself up on the back line to start to penetrate and be an option to be a real attacking player, specifically in what I call the half lane, which is that lane between the 6-yard and the 18-yard box. So first, if he's in the red zone more in a good pocket, he can be available to catch a ball and play vertically against the back line. And if they decide to overplay him and play with the fullback, then he's more in position to run at the back line and make himself available to be a real attacker. And that's in the end what you're trying to do, is make him into more of an attacker than just a build-up player. Okay, now we're a little bit more into some crossing situations. So here again, you see him come a little bit deeper so that he's not in position to run into the half lane. Pause. But here's what I'll say in general about Milan, as I was talking earlier. So where's Leao in this moment? They're playing at home. It's 1-1. You would like to see more numbers in the box. Christian's running in late. They have a striker in there that I think it's Jokic that came in for Giroud, but they don't have enough numbers in the box to be a real threat in some of these crossing situations. So getting him higher up the field, getting him running in the box, getting Leao more in the box. Here's one again where he goes 1v1 and pause. So they only have 3 in the box. Leao winds up coming in the box late, and it's a little bit of a surprise. But if he's in this position a little bit earlier, then maybe he's even closer where he can head it, or he can make a clear attack on the ball, and they're committing more numbers into the box. So finding ways for them to be aggressive in 1v1 situations, and then aggressive to be in the half lane, and then also flooding the box with more numbers so that in crossing situations, they're more dangerous. And then the last one here is a couple transition moments. So this is another one where Milan, pause, for me is they've tried to be a lot of a build-up team, and they haven't been as much of a transition team. Transition for me is about winning balls and then creating efficiency in the way you play vertically to get to the opponent's goal as quickly as possible. So this is Pulisic approaching the ball right now. He made this curved run, right? And look at the distance of that curved run is probably about 30 to 40 yards, right? So instead, imagine if you flattened out that red line, okay, and created that 30, 40 yards where he's catching the ball maybe closer to midline, and now where he's got a 3 or a 4v5 or 6, which by the way, later turns into a 5v11, okay? He has to be more efficient in now being vertical in the way he attacks and sprinting to go forward so that when they win balls, they can really be a threat to get out on the transition. So, let it play a little bit more, and you'll see that we changed it. So instead of it being a 3v3, he's 20 yards back behind the pitch. Then he has to slow down because he doesn't have any real options. So watch these. You can pretty much just let go. Watch Christian. Okay. So they lose the ball around midfield. He's maybe 10, 15 yards behind the ball. He runs back with Xerxes, bodies him in the box, and helps win the ball defensively. And by the way, whenever attacking players would do this, this would always show up in the team video for me.
Chuck, would you be able to handle an individual meeting with Jesse Marsch, video meeting?
Absolutely. I would have loved that as a player.
So are you saying that none of your coaches did that for you?
No, my first coach did, Tony Gustafsson in Sweden. And that's where I made, I think, the biggest jump, because you need to hear from the manager, because he's the one who picks the team, what he wants from you as a striker. What's important for him. Also, where does he see your weaknesses? Where can he see you grow? And it's one thing to coach a training session, right? I'm telling you what to do, what I want for my players. It's another thing to see it, the visualization from a manager to say, hey, this is how you should time your run. This is what, and then it all clicked for me when I had it on the pitch and doing the extra training, and this is what you need to work on, versus, hey, video session, sit down, you and me, we'll go through the whole match. This is what I like. This is what I don't like. This is where you can anticipate. This is how you can become better. And then it gives you the whole vision, the whole kind of build up to fulfilling your potential. So I love that. As a player, there's nothing more you want than more information, because the whole idea is you're trying to become the best player you can possibly be. And the only way you're going to do that is if you take the time and you listen to the manager who's picking the team.
That was a really sweet segment. I really like that. We should do that again. Coaching Corner here with Jesse Marsch. All right, we're going to take a break here for Call It What You Want. When we come back, some more of the good stuff, so don't go anywhere. So for our final thoughts, Call It What You Want for this show, we're going to hand it over to the one and only Jesse Marsch, who's got a little story about his time with Jürgen Klopp, who just made his big announcement that he's leaving Liverpool. Take it away, Jesse.
Yeah, so, I've gotten to know Jürgen a little bit. It's not like I have him in my phone or we're friends. We've always been friendly, and he's always been open for different conversations. And, the fact that I speak German and we've played against each other a few times, has meant that we've gotten to know each other a little bit. I don't know if you saw, but he referenced that managers age in dog years. So I know how that feels, right? And this is about feeding into that. So we play at Anfield with Leeds. We wind up winning the match. After the game, I'm actually relieved. That's the way it feels a lot of times after you win matches, and when you lose, it eats you inside, and you're just trying to figure out ways how to personally deal with those moments, and then how to help your team deal with in the moments when you're disappointed. And so our team was celebrating, and I was kind of back in the corner in the physio room and just kind of sitting, and I did my press conference, and I saw him quickly. He had finished his press conference, then I did mine quickly after, and then we went, and everyone was euphoric around our club. And I went back to the dressing room and grabbed my stuff, and I was walking out with one of the assistants, and Jürgen came out right before me, and I'd been to Anfield a few times, and it's a really nice tunnel kind of where you come from, where you park your cars to then when you go out to the pitch. They have a lot of nice imagery. They have some really good quotes. They have a lot of the trophies that they've won over the years. And obviously the history of a club like Liverpool is so massive. And Jürgen comes right out, and he just looks down, and he doesn't say anything to me, and he kind of goes, I don't even think he sees me. He's just in his own world. And he walks out with his head down and his hat's pulled down low. And he walks by players, he walks by staff, he walks by the parking people, and he just doesn't say a word. And he just marches himself out and goes to his car. And, what I thought at that time is being, here he is, the manager of Liverpool, and he's had great success, and he's done so many important things within our game in world football. But, being a manager, it's the loneliest job in the world. It really is. And I've often had to remind myself, like, okay, I've got to invest in my staff and believe in them and believe in the team and believe in the people in the club, because in the toughest moments, you feel absolutely alone. And so, you know, it was funny for me to almost feel bad for Jürgen at that time, because I associate with that feeling. I have no idea what it would be like to be Jürgen Klopp, but even the best managers and the best people in this business, I think, go through really tough moments. And in those tough moments, you know, you just think about your family, you think about the people you love, and you kind of want to escape. And so when I saw the announcement, it saddened me, you know, because I know in the end, probably the reason that he's doing it is because those moments, they add up and they make doing the job effectively and being yourself and enjoying the job very, very difficult. So I'm very thankful for getting to know him a little bit. I'm very thankful for the football he plays and the things I've learned from his teams, for the opportunity to play against him and have some of the best matches that I've seen my teams play have been against Jürgen Klopp. And I think because someone like that in the game always brings the best out of people. So, you know, congratulations, Jürgen, on an incredible career. I think you have an amazing chance to win the league this year, and I'm rooting for you, and I hope the best for you. So, yeah.
Jesse Marsch, everybody, very well said. I don't think anybody can pick it up after that. So we're going to call it a show. Thank you for listening and watching as always. And we really appreciate everybody behind the scenes for everything that they're doing to make us look better than we deserve to be. So that is it. Call It What You Want is finished. It is done for this week. And we'll see you very, very soon. Thanks for listening.